Life is more than just science and medicine. It's about us becoming better people, for us to have self-realization. And for that journey, I have one person to thank, and that's Sri Sathya Sai Baba.
Welcome to Souljourns. He's one of the foremost heart surgeons anywhere today, Dr. Val Jeevanandam. Family man, medical doctor, follower of Sri Sathya Sai Baba.
Sai Baba was born in a desolate village in South India. He's considered by millions to be a guru, a saint, or even a god.
Dr. Jeevanandam has distinguished himself by performing more than 1,600 heart transplants, and he is said to have performed more triple organ transplants than anyone in the world. Many of his endless surgeries are performed in the shadow of his spiritual guru.
I met him in 1993, and my life was changed forever.
This talk was given in February 2021 on the occasion of Dr. Jeevanandam's being appointed to the Cynthia Chow Professorship, as Dr. Val told the University of Chicago medical community about the influence that spiritual mentor Sri Sathya Sai Baba had on his life and on his work. This is part 2 of our series on Dr. Val, a world-renowned University of Chicago Medical Center cardiac surgeon, known for taking on the most difficult medical cases for patients thought to be inoperable. Part 1 of our series was published here on Souljourns in June 2010.
And for me, I think it was heart transplant that actually ended up getting me to Puttaparthi and then getting me to see Swami. That was the way he attracted me. That was his magnet for me to come there. Again, I'm an instrument. So the source of my gift is going to be God or Sai Baba. And I think he's using me purely as an instrument, and he's used that instrument for several things. He's used me as an instrument to help other people, and he's also used that instrument for him to help me.
In this program, Dr. Val talks about the powerful influence of his family, his loving parents and grandfather, and about his career and accomplishments, including his work at the University of Chicago, and how his life forever changed after meeting Sai Baba.
And it's interesting that he has his ashram in Puttaparthi, India, and countless people, heads of states, heads of all states, heads of billionaires, royal families have all gone to visit him. He built 2 hospitals, which was my lure really to go there in the beginning. A hospital in the bottom is called Puttaparthi, and that was built in 1991, and a Bangalore hospital in 2001. And the extraordinary things about these hospitals is that they do cardiac surgery. They do state-of-the-art cardiac surgery. Matter of fact, we've done cardiac surgery of all types other than transplant in both these hospitals. And it's done absolutely free of charge. There is no billing department. There is no billing insurance. Most of the patients that are done here are so poor that they may not even have the bus fare to get there. But they are done with extraordinary amount of love and care. And I've had the privilege of being able to go to those hospitals since 1993, and I continue to do so. The only reason I didn't go last year was because of the pandemic. You can see here, this is their outpatient department, and it's quite extraordinary. This is the outpatient cardiology department that sees 500 new patients every single day. And you can see that with a group of volunteers and a group of extraordinary physicians, they're able to get extraordinary care. You could see a picture of me operating there. You could see a picture of a patient in the ICU. But this hospital really is run by this group of extraordinary professionals who've been there since 1993. And I had the privilege of training them, and they've all become extraordinary professionals on their own. And every single time I go over there, they now train and teach me. People say, hey, how come you can do those small coronary arteries, and why do you do bypass surgery better than most? Well, it's because of all the experience I've had in Puttaparthi with patients with very small coronaries. People say, how are you able to get bigger valves in patients? Well, again, it was all the experience I had in Puttaparthi. So Sai Baba says, you take a step towards me and I take 10 steps towards you. And that certainly has been my experience by working with these extraordinary individuals and in that hospital, which is kind of my home away from home. So what are some of the life lessons I've learned from Sai Baba? He taught me that you control your actions, but the outcomes are determined by a higher power. You can either call that fate, nature, karma, or God. People ask me how come I can tackle many inoperable cases. And it isn't because I'm better than anybody else. It's just because you have the confidence that Sai Baba has instilled in me that if we absolutely do the best that we could do, whether a patient lives or dies or survives is in divine hands. And so we do the best we can. And if it's meant to be, it will be. And incredibly, almost always, they do well. Sai Baba taught me that to have a good life, you got to eliminate the ego, got to take the I. There is no I in team. There is no I. The only way anybody can accomplish things in the world is by universality and unity and realizing that everybody is important. He taught me that hands that serve are holier than lips that pray. And people always tell me, you know, what drives you? Well, the drive is to help mankind and to help as many people because we're given an incredible gift and it's our responsibility to give that back to patients and society. He also taught me universality, that everything happens for a reason. And our team sees that all the time. You may end up getting a case canceled. We say, oh my God, why did that case get canceled? And lo and behold, there's an emergency that occurs. And the only reason we're able to do that emergency or transplant is because an other person canceled 2 days ago. The other thing I've learned is that everyone, and this is something Sai Baba has told me over and over again, everyone is God's instruments. No one is special. Everybody has their role in what they do. For instance, here's Hema Pokarnan. Hema is somebody I met, and many years ago, and people may still think I'm this way. I was a little bit rash and would say things that perhaps hurt people. And Hema got me on the right path of what you would call nonviolent communication, being able to communicate better. I know it's, as I said, life is a journey and I haven't reached that yet, but I think I'm a lot better because of people like Hema. So these are the three most important people in my life: my mother, my father, and Sai Baba. And Sai Baba always calls me his coconut tree surgeon because I was so much taller than he was. He would say, hey, coconut tree, you know what? You transplant hearts, but I'm the only one who can transform hearts. And not only has he transformed my heart, but in an extraordinary way, he's transformed the hearts of an entire team. And that's probably one of the greatest accomplishments. I was born in Tuticorin, which is a small port town at the tip of India. And people always debate whether it's nature or nurture that creates a person. And I was blessed growing up with an environment of both. This is a picture of my parents. This is shortly after they were married. And they bestowed upon me incredible amount of intelligence and drive. We had a loving and fair environment. And they showed me that with hard work, integrity, and taking no shortcuts, many great things can be achieved. This is my maternal grandfather, and he was a true entrepreneur. He did not have education past the 5th grade, but they just say he just got it. He started off as a delivery person in a bicycle and ended up owning the store, then owning a group of stores, and ended up being one of the most prominent businessmen in the entire city. And he taught me out-of-the-box thinking. And I'll give you an example. In 1960, he had the foresight to create a biomass reactor where he would collect manure, put manure in, get the methane, and then realized that he had enough methane for his own house. So he actually started a little distribution system of methane gas. And that was in 1960, and a person without any real formal education. So quite extraordinary. My father, shown on the right, is the person who really made the transition for our family. He grew up in a small town called Tirumanglam, and he did very well in school, but his family needed him to work in their small business and cultivate peanut and the peanut fields. So a real transformation occurred because the principal of his school realized that he had a lot more potential, got him an application, paid for the application, and then convinced his family to actually allow him to go to college. And from college, he ended up doing extraordinarily well, came to Columbia to get his PhD in physical chemistry, went back to India to start their nuclear program, and realized that for his children, that's me and my sister, our opportunities in America were greater. So ended up coming back to America. He came back, kind of struggled with his career till he actually ended up settling in the field of biochemical physics, and was awarded here for his achievement in surgical nutrition. And what I learned from my dad, he was extremely detail-oriented, and he taught me excellence within the system, and honestly taught me how to publish. Our first residence in the United States was in Harlem, New York, and this wasn't Bill Clinton's Harlem. This was real Harlem at 125th Street and Broadway. And we lived there in apartment 15C in a low-income complex. In 1970, we became permanent residents of the United States, a family of 4 with grit, determination, and dreams. Education from the 5th grade was all in the United States in Fort Lee Public Schools. I graduated from Columbia University. You can see my picture there. On my left is my sister Geetha, who's an extremely accomplished dentist and teaches at the University of Minnesota. You can see my father on the right and my mom in the middle. And my mom is quite an extraordinary person. She has taught me the drive to be the best. I'll give you an example. I graduated 3rd in the class of 762 at Columbia, and she still wonders why I couldn't be number 1. So she's constantly driving me to be the best, and for that, I thank her greatly. She's taught me selflessness and that we should always be helping others. Incredible volunteer. She has many, what in India and Tamil, we say seva, our service projects. And not only has she done Seva's projects, but she started many others. She's taught me value-based living in that she's always clipping coupons and trying to find out where's the cheapest thing, even to this day. And she set me on this path to spirituality. I went to Columbia Medical School and then surgical residency from 89 to some 84 to 89. And then I did 6 months of CT research in the lab of Dr. Eric Rose. And Eric Rose was, whereas my parents were my life mentors, Dr. Rose was my work mentor. He taught me several things. He said, push the limits. Eric would tell me, take a car, jam on the accelerator, forget the brake, and steer really, really well. He built an incredible infrastructure for excellence. He built a lab, and he would just say, go work in the lab and just create. And I was certainly able to do so. So in the months during my residency and my fellowship, started a project that ended up in a patent using laser to do transmyocardial revascularization. You can see the US patent there. And what I'm proud of the fact is that this ended up becoming a company called Cardiogenesis. Unfortunately, the idea here was to create channels in the heart to create new blood vessels to revascularize the heart. And it didn't pan out, probably because the cardiologists didn't have adequate imaging to make this work. But epicardial laser revascularization, it still occurs, and we still have these machines at University of Chicago more than 40 years later. Well, I didn't, Eric just did not see any limits. So when we were in the lab, he said, hey, if you're doing something, you should never only do one. So he was contacted by DuPont at that time, and they said, hey, we have this new preservation solution. So by preservation, you can see here, this is a heart that actually has been preserved in a solution, and then you take this heart out when you do a transplant. And their question was, here we have this solution, we are using it in livers, do you think will it work in hearts? And Eric said, Val, you interested in the project? And we didn't know if it was going to work. It had dramatically different electrolyte compositions than the preservation solution that was normally used. Spent many, many hours doing baboon heart transplants. That was my first cardiac surgery. It was almost doing these transplants with Eric helping. And we found that these hearts were able to be preserved at 18 hours, far more than the 3.5 to 4 hours of normal preservation solutions. So Eric actually took this on and said, hey, you've proven it in the lab, let's do it in humans. And we did some initial human trials. And it was actually exciting and very nervous because you wanted to make sure that this would actually work in a human. And when it started beating, we were all excited, but even more excited when we saw how vigorous it was beating. That led on to a randomized clinical trial that Eric and I created, and we were able to actually implement and complete. And what I'm proud of is that there's really no better solution after 30 years. And we still use University of Wisconsin solution for the hearts that we have now from all the preclinical work that was done at my time at Columbia. So career paths always take people in different directions. My first job as an attending was at Temple University in Philadelphia, where I started in February 1st, 1992. And life always has challenges. On April 1st, Dr. Adnizia, who was the chief, brought me into his office and he said, hey, I got good news and bad news. I said, okay, well, give me the bad news first. He said the entire heart transplant program just moved about a mile away to Hahnemann. I asked him what possibly could be the good news. He said, Val, you're now director of this program. And so I became director of this program. My first call was to Eric and I said, Eric, get me the hell out of here. And Eric said, no, you're going to do great. And we will support you for anything you need done. So you have to understand that we did not have a pathologist. We did not have a cardiologist. We did not have a pharmacologist. And on the right, you see Barbara Todd. Barbara Todd was an APN. And at that time, Barbara told me, Val, you and I, we got it. And I said, you got to be kidding. And so we did do transplants. We played the role of the cardiologist. I did thousands of biopsies, over 5,000 biopsies at my time at Temple. I read the slides, we did the immunosuppression, we managed these patients before, during, and after transplant. And Barbara really set my goal of what an ideal APN can do and the incredible things that she was able to help me with. Well, lo and behold, we actually grew Temple's program from the 25 that they were doing before we took over to the 50s. And between 1995 and 1997, we were the largest program in the country. In 1997, we actually did 97 hearts, 30 lungs, and with 2 surgeons and an absolutely extraordinary amount of people who are dedicated in the operating rooms. But as I would tell a team, it's just not hard work, but innovation and creativity that's needed to have created all these to help all these patients. What I would tell a team is that outstanding programs can actually implement protocols and follow protocols, but elite programs are the ones that set new standards. And I'm going to show you a couple of things that we established at that time. So on the left is the normal size that we would accept for a donor heart. If a patient is 200 pounds, we would accept a donor heart plus or minus 20% from 160 pounds to 240 pounds. And in most programs, that's still the norm. Well, I was managing a patient, Joe, and Joe was 54 years of age and he'd been on support for about 6 weeks. And he looked at me one day and he said, Doc, my kidneys are failing, my lung is failing, my liver is failing. If you don't transplant me today, I'm going to die. And when a patient tells you that, you pay attention. At that time, we didn't have computerized systems. We made a lot of phone calls, and the only heart that was available was from a donor that was 8 years old and 80 pounds. I went to our chief of cardiology, Fred Beauvais, and I said, Fred, will a heart grow? And Fred said, I have no idea, but if you clamp an aorta on a cat, the heart does end up hypertrophying and growing. So maybe a small heart will grow. So we ended up, because we had no alternative, we asked the patient, he wanted to go for it. We ended up doing this transplant, and this tiny, tiny heart came back. And on the fly, we were able to figure out how to actually put it in, but more importantly, the physiology of how we could manage the patient. The patient came out with a heart rate of about 200 beats per minute. You know, the wife said, is this normal? I said, well, it isn't really normal, but I think we'll be okay. And so for the first couple of days, he did struggle. We had him paralyzed, but then he got better. He finally got off the ventilator. And you can see here, this is his first echo on postoperative day number 7. And look at the arrow. His stroke volume of how much blood his heart was actually contracting was only 38 cc's, which is quite small. But by 6 weeks, it had grown to 56 cc's. And then he was actually normal at that point. And you can see his annual at 3 years, where it's at 73 cc's. This gentleman actually lived till he was 82 years of age. It's the first time ever we were able to show that you can actually take undersized hearts and they can functionally and morphologically adapt to the needs of the patient. We don't do wide varieties like this anymore. A lot of it is because we don't get access to pediatric hearts because of large pediatric programs that are now available. But even now at University of Chicago, whereas most programs will have a plus or minus 20% weight range, so a 200-pound patient at 160 to 240 pounds, our weight range now is about 100 to 400 pounds, and that gets us hearts a lot faster than most other programs. Remember my experience with UW Solution? Well, we did use UW Solution at Temple, and normally our geographic weight range, if we were using normal preservation solution, would have been about to Iowa. But using UW Solution, we actually were able to go all over the world. And even to this day, we own the record for the longest ischemic time of over 9.5 hours on a patient whose donors came from Saskatchewan, Canada. The other thing that we showed is that you can take a heart and actually, by giving it thyroid hormone and other hormonal therapies, actually make it work. You can see here, this was a 16-year-old female, and this says it all. It says echocardiogram, severe LV dysfunction, EF 25% not suitable for donor. Well, if somebody ever challenges me that way, then it's always a challenge. So we spent about 12 hours giving this patient thyroid hormone that was newly available from SmithKline and Beecham at that time, or Beecham. And we actually got the heart to work, and we actually were able to transplant the heart, which led to this paper called Reversal of Donor Heart Dysfunction by Thyroid Hormone. These days, we don't see this dysfunction. And the reason is thyroid hormone, following those papers and others, is now routinely given to all patients when they're donors to prevent this type of dysfunction from occurring. And so what we did at Temple really was to redefine the standard for acceptable donor hearts. We showed that we can have preservation times of greater than 4 hours, that hearts with myocardial dysfunction could be used, that you could do sizing greater than 20%. You could use donors following cardiac arrest, which is very important for what we do now, because a lot of our donors have had cardiac arrest from drug overdoses. And we were the first to actually use hepatitis C positive serology hearts. At that time, we realized that about 50% of the patients did become hepatitis C positive, but it set the stage for the current era where with hepatitis C drugs, hepatitis C positive organs are used on a routine basis. How has this affected our program now? So this is the University of Chicago program, 30 years after all the scientific work went behind figuring out what donors we can use. Look at our median time to transplant. The median time to transplant at University of Chicago is 1.1 months. The median time to transplant around the United States is 6.9 months. And if one says you're just in a very good area and so you get hearts very quickly, look at the time to transplant for programs in our organ procurement area and in our region is 6.5 and 11.3 months. What we do at University of Chicago is extraordinary. Our time to transplant is 1/7 that of other people in the country, which is so far off standard deviation from the mean. When we were at Temple, I had a personal experience. My father had bypass surgery, and all night long he bled, and I would spend the whole night stripping his chest tubes and hoping and praying that he wouldn't need to go back to the OR because of bleeding. And I took it upon myself to kind of figure out how one could do bloodless surgery so we'd never have to do that again. At that time, there was a drug called aprotenin, and aprotenin was designed to stop bleeding during cardiac surgery. And we led the use of aprotenin in both heart transplantations and LVADs. Realized soon that just because we could do a transplant without blood really didn't mean anything until you can find an underserved patient population, and those were the Jehovah's Witnesses. And we had to respect their beliefs, but we realized that we could help this very underserved patient population. What has that done? 30 years later, University of Chicago, we're now the leading bloodless transplant and LVAD program in the entire country. And you can see these are all the people that have come to us just within the last 2.5 years, all over the country. And they would come from all over the world, except for insurance issues and how expensive it is. And you can see that patients from Texas, from California, from Alaska have come seeking our care because of the expertise at the University of Chicago Medicine. My journey continued from 1998. I moved from Temple to the University of Chicago, a large part because Bruce Gewirtz convinced me that this would be a great career move. And I came to University of Chicago, and innovation continued. The first innovation we did was in combination with Larry Gottlieb, who's still here, and David Song, who was a previous Chow professor. And we sat down and we said, hey, we do sternotomies for our patients. Is there any way we can decrease pain? Is there any way we can speed up rehabilitation? And is there any way we can decrease infection? And their concept was that instead of closing sternum with wire like we do on the left, what happens if we close them with sternal plates? And we started using that. The first time we closed one of these patients, it took about 2.5 hours, but we got it down to a science. And we were shown here in this paper published at JTCVS that in the transplant patients, if they were closed with wires, we had a 16.7% problem rate with their sternum, either infection or separation. But if we closed it with plates, that problem disappeared. They had decreased pain. And the limitations to exercise went from 8 weeks to 3 weeks. We took this and we developed an entire system of plates. And this is a company, Lorenz. And you can see here, this is not what we started with. This is like an entirely great system. And this was all developed with the use of our PAs who meticulously told the company exactly what sizes to use and how to design this. And it's now become the standard of care. But very interesting, we're one of the few institutions, although still the standard of care, that goes ahead and uses these plates. And why is that? And that is the main reason why I'm at University of Chicago. Because although these plates cost about $1,500 more per patient, most other executives will not allow their surgeons to use it because of the expense. But I've been blessed with hospital presidents such as Sharon O'Keefe and now Tom Jakowitz, and with the hospital operating officer like Jason Keeler. And when I go to them and I said, guys, this is the best thing for the patient. And they say, why? And you say it decreases infection, pain, and bleeding. But it does cost $1,500. They say, do what is best for the patient. And that is such a privilege that we have at the University of Chicago, that we're allowed to do what is best for the patient. And that's really special at our institution. Well, what else do we do that's special? Well, multiple organ transplantation. We're the leaders in doing combination of heart with liver, kidney, and pancreas. And in 1999, we did the first heart, liver, kidney transplant successfully in the entire world. This was a 30-hour operation that required a tremendous amount of resources. But again, there was no flinch within the administration of the University of Chicago to allow us to do this. In 2019, we actually accomplished a feat that had never been done before, where we got Daru Smith and Sarah McFarland, we transplanted them back to back with triple organs. And think of the incredible amount of resources and dedications of the teams that had to work together to pull this off. We are the world leaders in triple organ transplantation. We've done more than half of the ones recorded in the entire world. And I'm proud to say that with my partners in liver transplant and Yolanda Becker and Talia Baker, Yolanda with kidneys, not only have we shown that we could do triple organ transplants, that we can do them better with better results than anybody else, but we've also become world teachers. And that's one of the main missions at the University of Chicago, where people constantly ask us, how do you do it? And we tell them how to do triple organ transplants. And now we've also started an entirely new field of doing cardiac surgery followed by liver transplant in these particularly difficult patients. You know, life is full of challenges. And the biggest one I had was in 2007. So there's my wife, Sheila. The true glue that holds our family together. You can see our children, Veena and Vinesh. And Sheila's a community volunteer as well, constantly doing volunteer work in the South Side of Chicago. Well, we were making blankets and she was going up and down the stairs in our 3-flight house. And all of a sudden she stopped and they called me downstairs because her heart was racing. And I thought, you know, she was having either a normal rhythm, but she was just running around, or that she was having something minor like atrial fibrillation. I called our cardiologist friend over. We're trying to get her back in a normal rhythm. And we did some really stupid things. We gave her carotid pressure. We actually had her dunk her head in water to see if we can actually break this rhythm. These are normal things that are done to break atrial fibrillation. Lo and behold, we ended up taking her to the emergency room and she was in ventricular fibrillation with a heart rate of 240. And she needed to be defibrillated, as you can see down in the bottom, and she actually got her rhythm back. But for the next 8 years, she was a patient, and she had to undergo a lot of tests and a lot of challenges in life. And that made me become a better doctor and a better person. It taught me about the unpredictability of life and the fact that you have to enjoy every minute that you have. It taught me to be a patient advocate. And it's really weird that even in our institution now, if there's a particularly difficult patient that's having a difficult time making a decision, the cardiologist, who are supposed to be the people talking to the patient, will actually have a cardiac surgeon come and talk to them. And I'm able to do that because not only have I been a provider, but have been a person who's had to support somebody who's had a terrible disease. People don't understand, but defibrillators can cause PTSD. You know, Sheila got shocked 72 times over 8 years. That means that there's 72 times that she died and she came back. And every single time when I was near her, she would hold my hand really hard. And even to this day, if she holds my hand because of something good, I still think she's having a shock. So PTSD is real. And when our patients undergo it, I understand that. And we have to understand that with the patients as well. And the other thing I really realized is that patients do know best. She would say things are off and you look at the numbers are okay. But if a patient tells you there's a problem, then you gotta really, really understand the patient. I also realized at that time, many years ago, that at some point in life that she will probably need a transplant. And I wanted to make sure that she got her transplant in the smoothest way possible. As Jeff had mentioned, I also, in a parallel universe, have done a lot of work with LVADs, which are left ventricular assist devices. And you can see them here. This are little pumps that take blood away from the heart and deliver them back up into the aorta. Because of Dr. Rose's work, I've been stuck adjudicating complications on these LVADs because of the FDA and for multiple trials since 1998. So I know all the complications that LVADs can have. And I knew that the success rate to transplant was 35%. And in the United States at the current time, most people getting transplanted do get LVADs first. So I wanted to make sure that Sheila did not need an LVAD. So I wanted to see, is there a better way to get transplantation? So we started thinking about how you could support the heart for patients who needed to wait for a transplant. And we started using a device called intra-aortic balloon pump that does the thing called counterpulsation. For counterpulsation, there's a balloon in the aorta that inflates when the heart relaxes and deflates when the heart contracts. And you can see here, when the balloon pump is off, this is the heart's work. But when the balloon pump is on, the heart has to do much less work. The problem with these balloons is that they're large, not really mobile, and the patient is stuck in bed. These things are designed to be inserted to the femoral artery, so you can't really have a patient stuck in bed for a long period of time. So we thought, what happens if we can use the subclavian arteries, and that way we can keep a person mobilized and be able to deliver counterpulsation through an ambulatory fashion. So with the help of two of my fantastic colleagues, David Onsager and Tae Song, we've now taken this on, and we showed that you can deliver this, and you can see this patient here. He's actually speed walking. This is the patient that was transferred to us from Cleveland Clinic because he was a Jehovah's Witness and they could not transplant him. Not only did he get transplanted, he is thriving 8 years later. And you can see here, this is his balloon pump, and you can see if you turn the balloon pump off, he has no blood pressure. So it's amazing the power of the balloon. And what we showed is by supporting patients in this way, the 35% magically became 93.4%. And so we realized that we could support patients through transplantation. So if you could do that with the balloon pump, the question became, is there a way to do this and deliver this long-term so patients can actually go home with the balloon pump? And this drawings became genesis of a company called Newpulse CV. And this company really is run by Douglas Altschuler, who is the CEO, and Brian Novak, who brought in an investment team to actually fund this device. And this device is designed to allow patients to walk, to go home, to have normal lives. And the first in human experience with this device was at the University of Chicago Medicine. And I can tell you it was a fascinating experience taking a device that we had only put into cows and putting it into the first patient. That operation was 10 hours long. And it took a lot of creativity to get the patient out of the operating room. We learned a lot about software, about hardware, and the next patient got a lot better. The third patient got a lot better. We then figured out all the alarms and the user interface, and we did the first 13 patients at the University of Chicago. Once we figured out how to use the device, we then taught other centers, and right now it's about 16 centers across America, and 86 implants have been done, and the study is now ready for pivotal trials. And I will tell you, what type of support we got at University of Chicago, because the first patients, we did not get reimbursed. So these patients took an extraordinary amount of resources and time in the operating room, but we never got questioned about the time and the money that were spent. All we got questioned was, is that device working and is it helping patients? Well, during this time in 2014, I got blessed with some angels from heaven. So first to join us in cardiac surgery was Colleen Leboom. Colleen is an APN, and she really is a work soul partner. She's got an amazing amount of emotional intelligence, and she's somebody who's stern yet kind and can get things done. And you go into a room with a problem and you leave with a smile. And she's taken on her role as being an LVAD coordinator. She then ran cardiac surgery, and now she's running Heart and Vascular Center. And she's an extraordinary human being who's really been a blessing, both professionally and personally. Through the hard work of Jim Liao and Everett Vokes and Ken Polanski, we're able to recruit Nir Uriel to come to the University of Chicago in 2014. And Nir really transformed our program. Nir came to me and he said, Val, you have a superlative surgical program. We need to catch up from medicine. Nir put together an extraordinary faculty. He put together protocols, he put together discipline, and he set the stage for combining medical and surgical excellence to make our program what it is today. He left to go back to New York, but he did us another favor, and again with Jim and Everett's help, we were able to recruit Sean Pinney, and Sean Pinney is not only helping us maintain the heart transplant program and the LVAD program, but helping us transform healthcare as it's delivered across our institution as co-director of the Heart and Vascular Center. Well, Sheila did get transplanted. This is her the next day after transplant. And she's done great. This is her 6 months later, climbing a mountain, Squaw Peak in Arizona. She's traveled the world in the last 5 years. But most importantly, this is her with her students. This is her pride and joy. She teaches GED to these students, and these students have been given brand new opportunities. And when Sheila decides to do something, she really decides to do something. She doesn't only teach them, she goes to their house. If they have to pay money for the application, she pays for it. She then drives them to their exam if they need a lift. She's more than just a teacher, and she's an amazing social worker as well. And she's a friend and a mentor to them all. And it's all because of heart transplant. And it's because of this extraordinary group of professionals, of cardiologists, transplant coordinators, procurement coordinators who've taken care of her, and not only her, but many, many patients, and given them a great quality of life. When Sheila was going to be transplanted, Ken Polanski asked, why does she need to be transplanted at University of Chicago? There's got to be other programs that are better than ours. Why don't you, I will let you take her to any program you want. Why does she need to be transplanted here? Well, Ken, we got a simple answer. Your question was, is there a better adult heart transplant program in the US? Well, we've showed you that our patients wait 1.1 months as opposed to 6.9 months. We're 2 standard deviations faster to get to transplant than the average program in the country. When it comes to the rate of transplant, we are double the average in the country. Again, 2 standard deviations better to transplant. And when it comes to outcomes, you can see here, this says better hazard ratio, and better is lower. And in the last SRTR report, there is no better program with any better outcomes in the entire country. So to answer your question, yes, we are. We're not the biggest, and I don't think we'll ever be the biggest. But when it comes to innovation, taking care of high-risk patients and with results, yes, we are the best program in the country, and that's why she was transplanted here. I'm truly blessed with a great group of cardiac and critical anesthesiologists. These patients, these very dedicated professionals, not only take care of the patients that we have in the operating room, but then take care of them outside in the ICU and get them through. And some of the sickest patients in the world are treated incredibly well by this group of professionals. I'm blessed with great LVAD coordinators here. They're on the roof taking a picture with a helicopter, and with a great group of cardiac surgery clinical team that allow us to provide the care that we do. Our cardiac OR team is the team that I'm literally the closest to. There's no social distancing in the operating room. And we call them the Delta Force. And we call them the Delta Force because they're the elite of the elite Marines. And you can see our OR nurses, some of them who I've had the privilege of being with for decades. And you can see our perfusionist there, and a special call out to Leilani Miles. Leilani is somebody who I've been working with for 2 decades. And she's quite extraordinary. She never says no. She'll always figure out a way to make it work. And she's, you call her up and you say, Leilani, we got 3 cases. And it's never, oh my God, we got 3 cases. It's like, great, we'll make it work. And that's Leilani, and that's how we're able to deliver the care that we do. And these are our ORPAs, and a special call out to the 2 Johns. Whenever we do a Delta Force and I have a very difficult case, I say, hey, I gotta have the Johns. These 2 guys make the magic happen. When we talk about bloodless surgery, yes, I might operate on them, but these are the guys who make sure that the blood stops. These patients don't need to go back to the operating room. I may spend 4 hours for surgery, but these 2 extraordinary individuals spend many, many hours afterwards, making sure patients are perfect. And it's very interesting, Dan Edelman from our Booth School and Omar Latif actually looked at the results across the region. And our results in terms of bleeding and takebacks were extraordinarily good. And the reason is because of these 2 extraordinary individuals, John Stepney and John Ganesta. Been blessed with a great faculty, Take Oda, who's takes on incredibly difficult cases and has provided great care. We have Dr. Hibino and Dr. Bercella, who's helped with our new foray into adult congenital disease. Dr. Song, who leads lung transplant, Dr. Onsager, who goes out and is probably the world's leader in procurements, and Dr. Balke, who does robotic cardiac surgery. And I'm also blessed with this heart and vascular leadership team of Abby and Kristen, Sean and Colleen. And we're working very, very hard to kind of spread past just cardiac surgery and past cardiology and try to figure out how to actually deliver healthcare in a much more streamlined and better environment, especially for those in the South Side of Chicago and underrepresented patients. So in conclusion, I've been blessed to be part of great teams with many contributions to treating cardiovascular diseases, and especially heart transplantation. Past science and medicine is how we actually deliver the care. And I'm going to end by sharing a letter from Anita Marcotte, wife of Mark Pickelman, who was one of our transplant patients who had got the Newpulse device. It's a long letter. These are the highlights. And I'm going to read you those highlights. It says, "Dear Dr. J and Heart and Vascular team, you are all kind, positive, and gave us hope. Mark and I have been at Cleveland Clinic, University of Michigan, University of Pittsburgh, and other large hospitals. Mark and I agreed that the incredible treatment, caring, and compassion you all showed Mark and I was unlike anything we've ever experienced with any other team at any other hospital. Your healing comes from a place of love and of commitment to caring for others as your life's mission and work. I feel a deep reverence for your spiritual way of life as evidenced in your work and interaction with patients, family, and colleagues. Thank you very much."